Considering the many varieties and activities in material nature, why should the Mayavadi philosophers deny the spiritual varieties in the spiritual world? The Bhagavatam says, Yenye ravindaksha vimukta maninas tvaya astabhavat avishuddha buddhayat. The intelligence of those who think themselves liberated but have no information of the spiritual world is not yet clear. In this verse, the term avishuddha buddhaya refers to unclean intelligence. Due to unclean intelligence or a poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand the distinction between material and spiritual varieties. Therefore, they cannot even think of spiritual varieties because they take it for granted that all variety is material. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore explains in this verse that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Absolute Truth, has a spiritual body which is distinct from material bodies, and thus his name, abode, entourage, and qualities are all spiritual. The material mode of goodness has nothing to do with spiritual varieties. Mayavad philosophers, however, cannot clearly understand spiritual varieties, therefore they imagine a negation of the material world to be the spiritual world. The material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance cannot act in the spiritual world, which is therefore called nirguna, as clearly indicated in Bhagavad Gita, Traiguna Vishaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. The material world is a manifestation of the three modes of material nature, but one has to become free from these modes to come to the spiritual world where their influence is completely absent. Now, Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will disassociate Lord Shiva from Mayavad philosophy in the following verse. Stay tuned. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is the author of the Chaitanya Caritamrita. And interestingly, he compiled the Chaitanya Caritamrita at a very advanced age, where he himself says that very old, trembling, his hands are trembling, his memory is failing. But somehow or other, the Chaitanya Caritamrita is like the PhD of all spiritual scriptures, because it deals with the personality of Godhead. It deals with his personal aspect. So sometimes you can question how authorized is such an author. And there's a little anecdote which is very interesting about Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who has written mostly three books, Govinda Lilamrita, Krishna Karanamrita, and a commentary from Biva Mangala Thakur. And in one of those books he writes that the Gayatri mantra is 24 syllables. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami never met Lord Chaitanya, he came after. But he wrote this Chaitanya Charitamrita based on the notes taken in Sanskrit by Swarup Damodar, who was always with Lord Chaitanya, and he was writing a diary in Sanskrit. And then Raghunath Das Goswami, on the request of Swarup Damodar, memorized all the notes in Sanskrit. This is the caliber of people those days. And then he actually recited those notes to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So then there was an incident, whereas Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami got into a bit of an altercation with his brother in regards to the validity of Lord Nityananda. And he said, well, I accept Lord Chaitanya, but I don't accept Lord Nityananda. And at that time, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami took the side of Lord Nityananda, and he was very upset with his brother. And that very night, he had a dream. Krishna appeared to him in the form of Madan Mohan, their worshipable deity at the time. And he said, you should go to Vrindavan, you should write this book. Anyway, he started writing. And then later on, when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur came along, and we know Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was a very advanced personality. He wrote the Madhurya Kadambini. Everyone should read that because it's a treatise which explains, it's the map of your life. Madhurya Kadambini is one of the most important books because it tells you exactly where you're at. He says, oh, you go from here, then you go there, and you're there, like all sorts of things. He quotes, should I get married? Should I not get married? Should I stay brahmachari? Lord Brahma got married, Narad Muni got brahmachari. It's a very interesting book, actually. Everyone should read that. And he picked up this thing that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, it's 24 syllables in a Gayatri, Kama Gayatri mantra. But he says there's 25. He couldn't work it out. So he decided to fast. So he just fasted. Sat on the bank of wherever it was, Jamuna Ganga, he started fasting. And he was fasting until he understood that's how you understand things, through austerity, performing austerity. And then Radharani appeared to him in a dream. And she said to Vishwanath Chakravarti, she said, don't worry, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is actually one of my girlfriends. He's a Manjari. And he said he's got it right because, and then she quoted 2 syllables, 2 consonants in Sanskrit, and they make one. So he said because you put those 2 consonants together, then it makes one, so therefore he's right, it's 24. But you count it as 25. So Vishwanath Chakravarti was very happy. But nonetheless, little anecdotes like this that describe the bona fide aspect of such authors, what to speak of his work. So in this particular chapter, it's very interesting because he begins the chapter, of this chapter 7, by describing the different aspects of God. Like he has, the 5 features. This is how God appears. You got the bhaktas, you got the prabhus, the supreme Mahaprabhu, and then you got the smaller prabhus. And he describes Lord Nityananda, Advaita, who they are, Gadadhar, etc. He describes everyone much in detail. And then, once he's established that, he jumps to the Mayavadis. That's interesting. But then if you follow the story of it, you see that there's a method in that. And the method is that he says, this is God. But you cannot understand God if you do like them. And the Mayavadis, they're renowned to be expert in Vedanta Sutra. They know all the Vedas. So then he explains these very complicated matters about the Supreme Lord. But then he jumps to the Mayavadis and says, see those guys? They can't understand. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes in. So when you talk about the Mayavadis, it's kind of interesting because sometimes you got this idea of Mayavadis, I don't know if you've been to India, but you go to India and then, they're the guys hanging around with the orange robes that wait at the thing for the chapati. People feed them chapatis, they kind of hang around, they renounce and things like that. So you got that idea of Mayavadis. But actually the reality is that Mayavadis is, it's very pervading throughout the whole world, especially the Western country. Therefore, when we recite the mantras to Srila Prabhupada, what do we say? We say, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharini. So Gauravani Pracharini came to the West to preach. Desatarine. Nirvishesha Sunyavadi. Paschatya Desatarine. That he came to the West to fight these 2 things. The Sunyavadi, which is basically the Buddhist, and the Nirvishesha, which is the Mayavadi. So he came to do that. And so sometimes you wonder, you think, what's the big deal with Mayavadis? There's even some people on the forum, on some Hare Krishna forum, they say, what's the big deal? Krishna, okay, you say Krishna is the Supreme Lord, but what's the big deal? If someone wants to be a Mayavadi, someone wants to be an impersonal, someone wants to be a Buddhist, just let them be. But Prabhupada has in this statement, we shall fight the Mayavadis. Even in one lecture in, I think it's in Mumbai, a conversation, he said, chanting and dancing is not enough. So we must defeat them philosophically. And Prabhupada was very strong against the Mayavadis, like when he had this stage show, either in Mumbai or whatever, they had the Mayavadis there. So he spoke, and they didn't really want him to speak, but he spoke very firm against Nirvishesha and Sunyavadi. And then when the Mayavadi guy came up to talk, he stood up and Prabhupada said, start the kirtan. I just went, he's whooping kirtan to drown the guy out. he was he was really heavy on the Mayavadis, and then you wonder why is it Shiva? Because he said you got to fight them. Because they're everywhere. The mentality in the West is actually all-pervading Sunyavadi and Nirvishesha. And so you can say, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is that when a living entity comes to the material world, whatever he gets from the spiritual world, he looks at it through the lens of the material world, and that becomes a perverted reflection of whatever happens in the material world. So, when we come here, then we look at variety. And guess what the mother of enjoyment is? Hello?
Right.
Sorry to wake you up. What's the mother of enjoyment?
Right.
It's variety. Everyone loves variety. So, what the Mayavadis do, the real damage, is that they vacuum the variety out of the spiritual world. So then what happens? Then everyone turns to the movies, Facebook, theater. They turn to that materially. Because they said that the spiritual world has no variety, they took that out of the spiritual world. So because everybody loves variety, and it's the mother of enjoyment. This is variety and relationships is the whole thing. Because imagine like you build a big house, right? You work all your life, you build a big house and everything, and you're out there, or whatever you got some kind of wealth, and then you got no one to share it with. You got absolutely no one to talk to. You're sitting there in your house all by yourself, and you're very happy. You reach the summum bonum. But you got no one to share, no one to invite, no one to share it. You and the neon lights all turn on. That's it. So that's not really enjoyment. So enjoyment is sharing. Like Krishna enjoys, in spiritual, but he has his friends, he enjoys, he shares. So the Mayavadis, what they've done, which is the damage, they say there is no variety in it, and it's very cunning, because if there's no variety in the spiritual world, then people are going to become godless. No interest. It's zero. It's Sunyavadi. There's nothing there. So I'm not going there. I'm not even interested. So therefore you wonder why over the years the temples have emptied, and as Prabhupada says in the letter that he wrote in 1957, the cinema house is filled up. He says the vulgar cinemas. So the interest is gone there. Because in the days of yore, everybody used to sit on the village and hear the Ramayana, hear the Mahabharata, hear all those fantastic stories about Krishna, and everybody would be excited and they'd be happy. But then as this diminished with the introduction of the secular government, which said, no, you don't talk about religion at school. Even in France, they introduced this new thing, or they tried to when it was Chirac, and they say, if you talk to a child about vegetarianism, that's child abuse. Yep. The Pope said, whoa, hang on, that's a bit much. But this is how far the secular government will go to remove the interest. And this is a product of the Mayavad philosophy, who said, no, there's nothing there. Nothing. So therefore, keep busy engaging your mind there. So that's really the damage. So therefore you think, well, how are you going to, what's the issue? How does it manifest? Is it the cause, or is it the symptom, the Mayavad philosophy? Well, the Mayavad philosophy is simply it's not a cause, it's a symptom. What is the symptom of? And Krishna describes it in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter. He says, Vitaraga, Bhaya, Krodha. He says those three things, Raga, Bhaya and Krodha, you got to give it up. And what are they? So Krishna talks about, he said, when you give this up, then you can understand me and you can basically attain my transcendental nature. So what's raga? Raga means attachment. So, attachment to the material world. What is bhaya? Bhaya is fear. So what are we fearful of? No. Some people say, not afraid of death. They actually live like that. What is Krishna refers to a particular thing in that chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhaya. Bhaya, it means that one is afraid of personal identity. Because we move about this world and we always have problem with people. I know you don't, but sometimes, people, they get to you that you just want to get away from them. And then you develop, as you go through your life, the lesser seed is one, the better. You just keep your distances more and more. So then you come to the conclusion, having no spiritual knowledge, because up there's the big vacuum, it's empty, there's no variety. So then you think, I really have some problems with people, and now when I get liberation, again I'm going to become a person? No way. So that's the fear. No personality after that. That's Bhaya that Krishna refers to in the Bhagavad Gita. And then the last one is Krodha. Krodha, Krishna refers to anger. And why would become angry in this material world? Why would we become frustrated? I can't get, no. You can, yeah, well, some people do get what they want. They really do. But the one, Krishna is more referring here to frustration because there's so many philosophies, so many opinions, so many different ways of doing things, and at one point some parents just get frustrated and say, this is too much. I can't figure it out. You'll find a lot of people avoid information because it's just too much, especially nowadays when you get bombarded by this and that. So they become frustrated because it's just too many options. So what's the solution to that? Nothing. Voidism. So Krishna says, fear, that anger, you become frustrated. You become of what? There's too many things in material world that I can't understand. So I become frustrated. So then refer to. So all these three things, like negligence of spiritual life, fear of a personal identity, and frustration in the material world, they all lead to become impersonal. And Krishna says, well, give that up. So if you want to apply a solution to this, then you apply let's say, Hegel's theory. He goes thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So what is the thesis? The thesis is that, just for information's sake, a thesis is something that everybody will accept. That's the thesis. So you present the thesis, so what is the thing that everybody accepts? Is that everyone loves variety, isn't it? I mean, who likes to do the same thing every day over and again without talking to anyone, and just like you only see yourself, nothing else, you do the same thing. Everybody likes to talk to different people, go to different countries, eat different foods. Everybody loves variety. So that's the thesis. So what is the antithesis? The antithesis is that we love the variety, but it's painful. It's painful in many ways, which I don't have to go in details now, but you can imagine, right? You love to eat different foods, but there's some places where you eat food, it has an effect here, and then, so many things. There's a plethora of things that can go wrong with interacting with the material variety. So the antithesis is that, yes, there is variety, but it's painful. Like that poster that you saw that Krishna Rupa brought there. What it says? Yeah?
Love shouldn't hurt.
Yeah. Love doesn't have to hurt, but love does hurt. That's the antithesis. Everybody says, yeah, I want a nice relationship and everything, but then boom, something happens. So what is the synthesis? Synthesis is the resolve between the thesis and the antithesis. So what is the synthesis in this case? Void. Huh? Void. No. Because void means that and this is where the Mayavadis go wrong, you got the point, is that the Mayavadis, they don't do synthesis, they just say, oh yeah, the thesis is that you like variety, so no variety, just remove the thesis. But that doesn't make any sense. So the synthesis means that variety is there, everybody loves variety, but variety is painful. So what is synthesis? Synthesis. Where is the variety that is not painful? That's the synthesis. Where is it? So then you ask that question. I mean, not many people ask that question, but that's really what it should be asked. Where is the place? Where is that realm where there is variety, but without the pain? Now that's a smart question. So that's a synthesis between the thesis and the antithesis. So to do that, of course, I don't have to teach you everything you know already, but to do this, then you can't approach the synthesis directly. You can't approach the spiritual world and say, hey, here I am, I'm going to find out how it works. I'll just read a couple of books like the Mayavadis do. Now, to do that, if you really want to know someone, then what's the best thing to do? Like if I really want to know how Kiri functions, for example. Now let's take a better example. If I really want to know how Padma functions, then what do I do? Then I go to Surat, because Surat is his best friend. So I ask Surat, what's Padma like? So Surat will say, Padma likes socks like this and like that. Special colored socks. He likes this, he likes that. Why? Because I asked someone who knows him. So the best way to find out what is the, where is that place, is to find someone who knows it. Well, in plain terms, Hare Krishna language, it's called a spiritual master. So we approach the spiritual master because the spiritual master is someone who's seen this, as it says. I think Krishna mentions it somewhere in the Gita. He says something like Tadviti Pratipalena Paripashna Sevayo Parishate Gyanas Gyaninas Tattva Darshinaha. So the Tattva Darshinaha bit, it means that he's Krishna's friend. Because, Tattva Darshinaha, he's seen the truth. So you ask him. So the intelligent thing to do after doing the synthesis would be to say, well, I'm going to ask someone who already knows about it. So that's approaching spiritual master. And then, interestingly so, but in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter, the 10th verse there, Prabhupada goes through all these things of impersonal, and then at the end he says, well, this is what you got to do. You got to do Adao Shraddha, Tada Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and then he goes on. So you approach, you have some faith that there is some realm where you don't have to suffer. So what do? Then you approach those who know, the sadhus, and then you take initiation. And then you undergo the process of Bhajana Kriya. And what does the process of Bhajana Kriya do? It actually removes those three things that Krishna talks about in the same verse, saying you got to get rid of. That's personal identity and fear and frustration, all that kind of stuff. So the thing that the Mayavadis do, they do exactly what in the Katha Upanishad said you should not do. And what does the Katha Upanishad say? I mean, they read it, they study it, but they can't get it. This is how stupid they are. They're real dumb. So what does the Katha Upanishad says? Nicho nityanam chitano chitananas eko bahodi yo vidatati kamam. You all know that verse. It says it's simple. And this is Katha Upanishad. All the Mayavadis, they know this by heart, they can recite it, whatever. So what does it say? It says, well, all living entities are eternal, and all living entities are conscious. And then he says, but there's one living entity who fulfills Bahuda Kamam, fulfills all the desires of the others. So one living entity maintains all the others. Okay? So what does it do? Well, it means that, whenever I got some idea or some desire or whatever, then that living entity fulfills that idea. Right? That's what it means, eh? So let's say that, I want to find out how the absolute truth and whatever, then I have my own ideas. So yeah, okay. So you think that, there's nothing, there's no variety, and you think that liberation, the voidism, sunyavadi, you mean that it's just nothing, we just become nothing, right? So Krishna says, okay, he's the one entity that fulfills. Say, I'll fulfill the desires. Look, I'll light up some corner of the universe, I'll light up some corner of the creation, and you can all go there and be all lit up like a Christmas tree and do nothing. So you'll do that as well. So whatever you propose to Krishna, Krishna will fulfill the desire. Krishna only reciprocates. In this particular instance, according to this Katha Upanishad sutra, that one of the aspects of the Supreme Lord is simply fulfills desires. So you have this desire, so therefore thinking like that, you cannot really find out who he is. Because as soon as you come in front of him and you say, well, I think it's nice. Like my mother, when she came here, she said, oh, these are nice dolls. So Krishna reciprocated like a doll. Yeah, look good. Yeah. Or you come here and you say, well, this is nice marble, well carved. Yeah, so Krishna appreciates it. Krishna says, yeah, with marble, it's fine. And some other will come and say, the Krishna is so beautiful, Krishna does this, does that, then Krishna will reciprocate with that. So Krishna will reciprocate with whichever you come up with. So therefore that leads to the next point, because the Mayavadis even they sometimes they have deities. Like one time I was in Brisbane in the 90s and I went to this Mayavad program. I didn't know it was a Mayavad program, but then they pulled out this Radha Krishna, they put him on the desk there, really nicely dressed and everything. And then they came with this big plate of prasad. So I thought, great, prasadam's coming along. The guy put the plate there. Then he did some kind of offering, whatever. Then he put his hand in and started eating it straight away, even not offering, whatever. I said, what the hell is this? So he was Krishna. So Krishna is just, anything you want, Krishna will reciprocate with that. So the problem with approaching the absolute truth directly like that, or according to your understanding of the scriptures, is that Krishna will reciprocate with that. Even if you understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, is God and whatever, you still got to be careful. Because how you approach him, there's that example of that old lady that's carrying, the big bundle of twigs on her shoulder, and she's bending over, she's carrying the thing, and the thing falls over. And then Krishna, because of her previous life, whatever she's done in Paris, Krishna appears in front of her and says, yeah, what can I do for you? Oh, I said, can you just pick that up and put it back on my other shoulder, please? Because this one's a bit sore. So we got to be careful that we don't also approach Krishna, although we may know, like the Mayavadis, they have no idea what Krishna is. So Krishna fulfills their desires. And you can approach Krishna also with some personal motive. And first thing, Krishna will fulfill a personal motive. So Krishna basically reciprocates according to that. So therefore, we must approach someone, spiritual master, who knows how to approach Krishna and say, this is what Krishna likes, this is what he doesn't like. So you got to be like when you read the story of the touchstone and Sanatana Goswami, he goes around, touch everything, and everything becomes gold, it's a touchstone. And then the Brahmana comes and he asks him about the touchstone. He says, oh, it's in the garbage. The guy runs, yeah, great, touchstone. Then he thinks, whoa, hang on. Why did he say that? So we should be a little smart also and see that great, like Krishnadas Gaviraj Goswami, great advanced devotees, they don't deal with Krishna, like they don't ask for petty things. So we got to be careful how we approach it. So you don't use personal motives. And then for the devotees, I think I've mentioned this before, but you go one step further. And the one step further is that every devotee should have what's called an Istadev. An Istadev means it's a deity that they choose to serve, and they just serve this deity, like the Goswamis are everyone else. So in that case, we've got Radha Govardhandari, and we serve Radha Govardhandari, we serve Krishna Balaram, Giriraj Maharaj, and Gauranitai. But somehow or other, you got to understand the mood of the deities. Or am I just here to kind of see what deal I can get, how much food I can eat, and I can work it out. Now, we've got to understand the mood of the deities. There's even an instance where Prabhupada went to Kala Chandraji in Dallas, and he was greeting the deities, and the Pujari came out, standing next to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada went up to him and said, so, what is the mood of deities? How do they feel? And the Pujari was like on this pregnant pose. He just thought, his head just went 100 miles an hour. What am I supposed to say? He didn't say anything, but at the end, Prabhupada just waited. And at the end he said, well, how would I know, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada was quite dissatisfied, actually. He said, you're a close servant of the deities, you should know what they want. So this indicates that, Krishna is everywhere, it's all the same. But it's not all the same Krishna. Krishna as Radha Govardhandari here is not the same as Krishna Radha Gopinath in Sydney and somewhere else and somewhere else. They have different moods, so that we should understand that. That we understand that by, as Krishna says, by approaching with a humble mood, free from personal motives. So therefore, service applied properly without personal is the best thing to do. Because if you do service, then naturally you're trying to please Krishna. And we know that by pleasing Krishna, then we know, we can understand how Krishna is. So therefore, we need to be careful how we approach Krishna, because the Mayavadis approach the absolute truth in a way that is not only damaging to the world, but it's a very direct way. There's no spiritual master, there's no one who knows the absolute truth that guides them. So they read the scriptures and they get it all wrong. And not only that, but they create such a great disservice in a society by presenting that the spiritual world is nothing. Whereas the spiritual world, as we know, is full of variegatedness, is full of different flavors. But people don't know that nowadays. So therefore, the whole society nowadays is turned towards the material variegatedness. And that's the disservice that the Mayavadis have done. And this is what makes the Acharyas very angry and against them. Okay, 8:15.
Thinking about this point of the connection between Mayavadi philosophy and the Western world, materialism, and things like that. I just remember speaking with a lot of Christians in the streets in America, and a lot of them, their perception is instantly that we are Mayavadis, that we're impersonalists. Like Christians, they have a personal conception of God, and I've been distributing books, and Christians will try to save me from my impersonal conceptions. They think that Krishna is not God, and actually we're just an illusion and something like that. And they try to save me from not having a personal conception of God. And that's really common. Anything from the East is Shunyavadi. Anything from India is impersonal and voidist. I think there's a famous circumstance in the 1800s, I forgot the name, Paramahamsa Yogananda or something like that. He spoke at a famous religious gathering in Chicago, and he spoke impersonal, violent philosophy. Since then, all the major world religions have that this is the primary conception of anything from India is voidism.
But people, without even acknowledging that it comes from India, they adopt this process as well. And for the simple reason that, for one, is that they want to get stuck into the enjoyment of the material, and second, it's better if you got no one to answer to, isn't it? It's great, it's good life. I can do whatever I want, and there's no one to answer to. And that's the prime mover. I'm free.
The Christians that have the personal God, are they classified as personalists or impersonalists?
I don't know any Christians that have personal God, because they talk about God but they can never describe Him.
Let's talk about the Father. The Father.
They talk about His function, but they never talk about, like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins this chapter, very descriptive. I've never heard Christians with personal God. I don't know, have you? Description that is like this, is like that. I mean, you see this old man with a beard, but just, I think that's a projection of time. But I've never heard Christians mention. Have you?
Yeah, for example, South America, you find that a lot of people are really into God as a person. Of course, he's a supplier and all that, but they really think he's a person, he's not just a light or something.
But don't they refer to Jesus though?
The Son, or would they say?
Huh?
Mostly,
It's the Son of God.
mostly the Protestant Christians think that Jesus is God.
Yeah.
But the Catholic Christians, they acknowledge the fact that there is a Father and Jesus is the Son of the Father.
But do they give descriptions of him?
No, but you can see through the paintings, not like you mentioned before, like they paint an old man on a cloud alone.
Well, that's not really what Krishna looks
Not a
like.
very encouraging description.
So they don't really have any knowledge of,
No.
like the Mayavadis basically. So basically they are
But
Mayavadis.
at the same time, like Prabhu, like Adi Prabhu said that it's, they recognize that God is a person.
You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada in the purport writes that when you have fear of personal identity, then the best you can get up to is to find that the universe is great, and this is as far as their understanding of God is. The nature is awesome. It's just this is it. And people talk like that. Yeah, it's all about nature. But they're Mayavadis as well. And you know, if you look at the education in society, it's so Mayavad that the idea is to remove from the spiritual world so that people focus on the material world. And if you look at, they remove spiritual technology with the secular government. So what happens? Then they develop technology, like, you know, planes and cars and computers, whatever. So they focus on this technology. But why do they focus on this technology? It's because there is a need for advancement. Innate in the human being, there's a need for advancement. But they can't advance spiritually because everyone, the government, everything's been busy removing all kind of spiritual technology from the schools, education system. Prabhupada says that many times, where is the university that teaches these things? There is none. So they removed all that, so there's no spiritual technology. So guess what? Because we're looking for advancement, they think that developing the technology as we know it now, that's advancement. And that's what Prabhupada calls the demoniac society. It's that thinking that now I've got machines and I've got this, therefore we are advanced. But no, real advancement means spiritual technology. So this is what the Mayavadis do. They remove from Krishna. And then because they do that, people have nowhere to attach yourself transcendentally, so therefore they turn to matter. It's a really big disservice. It's very offensive actually. Because there's no description of God's nature, how beautiful, how diverse it is. So even the Christians, it becomes like a religion. You either believe it in it or you go to hell. What the hell is that? What the hell?
In relation to Christians, they don't describe the personal features of God, but they do describe a lot that He's omnipresent, He's omnipotent, nothing moves without His will, He's everywhere. So they do accept somehow the concept of being the person is there, but they don't say, oh, He has a flute.
Well, not necessarily, because that's a function. What you described are functions. So functions, they don't attach those functions to a person. They say they are functions. This is the absolute. So the absolute functions, omnipresence, this, that, everything you mentioned, but they don't attach it to a person.
In the prayers, like for example, I was educated as a Christian, and all my family was, and in many prayers, they do see the concept is not like Mayavadis. They do see like there is a supreme spirit. That's why it says the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. And that spirit has qualities.
Yeah.
He's omnipresent, nothing moves without His will.
Yeah, but that's for the common Catholic or the common Christian. Now if you go into the theology, then you'll find that most of the time we'll say, yeah, He's there, He has those qualities, and then when you become liberated, then we are all hit. We become it. Because we go back to Him. It's either that or the Mormon's option that you go with your wheelchair, you know, and see your grandmother in the heavenly planets.
But the Mormons is not authorized.
Okay, but yeah, I'm saying there's one or two options. There is no description in a Christian text how you're going to have a relationship with God. There's no such thing. So if there's no such thing, basically it's Mayavad philosophy.
Or could be also a step and a level towards.
Well, that's a different story. The step, yes, but in terms of describing what really is, it is not indicating of a personal philosophy or an acceptance of an identity. The Christian church does not describe that. Therefore, Prabhupada and Krishna says clearly in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that you develop a fear of personal identity and spiritual identity. You develop that fear. Otherwise, if that fear was not there, then you would say, yes, let's have a spiritual relationship. And who am I going to have a spiritual relationship with? Oh, no one's there at the other end. So there's no completion. And as you say, yeah, there is some things, but there's no completion to enter into a relationship. Therefore, Krishna says, the second thing is bhaya. You get that fear. And that fear is amongst all the so-called religious system nowadays, which leads to impersonalism, no doubt.
In relation to Mayavadis, you mentioned, I think I understood that you mentioned how they don't have a guru, they don't have a sampradaya. So
I didn't say sampradaya, I said they don't have a guru.
But they don't have a guru.
They have a leader.
Inside the system,
They have leaders.
like Sankaracharya.
They don't have a guru system like we do because they don't do guru sadhu sastra.
So they don't have guru. They don't have initiations or anything.
Well, they may have, I don't know.
The pastors.
Last time I visited the Buddhist temple, it was a long time ago. Yeah, they have the leaders, but it's not the same way as accepting. See, they attach a lot of importance on detachment from the material world. Whereas the devotee doesn't really, there is detachment that comes automatically, but it's not, the devotee is using things in Krishna's service. So his primary thing is not detachment, whereas the Mayavadis it is. So that's taught by force, not by surrender.
Sorry to interrupt you, probably that would be one clue to recognize Mayavadis that they, in my opinion, not in my observation, they tend not to have a good service attitude.
The Mayavadis?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the least you could say.
Yeah, so they tend more to
Exactly.
to be served.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because they are the supreme. That's what they teach. Yeah. So that's not really the definition of a guru. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.